Hello. In this short video, I'm just going to give some feedback about the essay that was looking at matching our ideas about community with community work models and approaches. And hopefully this feedback will also give you some tips and some ideas to consider for the next major assignment that's due on June 5, which I will also speak about in this short video. Some of the things that I've noticed when marking the essays where people are talking about their ideal community and what model or approach of community work would assist them to achieve that are the following. One of the things that stood out for me was, for some people, they have not read the basic core texts. What that means is when you read the assignment details, it asks as part of your preparation to read the basic text. So they're the core texts that are set as reading for the units, for the modules as part of this subject. So if you're interested in looking at a particular issue, let's say for example, the absence of domestic and family violence, and you only read articles or references about that, and you didn't also refer to the key texts that are part of this unit, you would have lost marks for that. So it's really important in your answers to demonstrate that you've read and are referring to the texts that are part of this unit. So they're the readings that each week are listed for you to read. Obviously you won't read and refer to all of them, but there's an expectation that you will refer to at least 5 texts, and those core texts should be represented in that list. One comment about using dictionary terms. Some students have a tendency to like to use dictionary terms. I encourage you not to do that. It's an academic essay. You should be referring very strongly to the academic texts to define what you mean by community or what you mean by models. So an over-reliance on dictionary definitions is not really a great thing. So I would discourage you from doing it or relying on that. In terms of the writing, one comment I'd like to make about the language: if it says an essay, it means an essay, which means writing prose, which means writing in sentences. It doesn't really ask in an essay for you to include tables or illustrations or diagrams. If it asked for that, it would have said so. So it's not helpful to put in tables in an essay. In that language, if you can avoid using colloquialisms. What we mean by colloquialisms is informal language. So, for example, these phrases, I would not encourage you to use them. As I was saying, that's one of them. Or so you can see. Or in any case. It's informal language that is not encouraged to be used in academic writing. So there's another way of saying those same things. So instead of saying as I was saying, you could say as stated earlier in this essay, for example. So avoid that informal use of language. The next comment I want to make is about making links between the question and make connections. So some people in their answers went into very lengthy descriptions and just described and talked about in quite some detail a particular model. However, if that was not connected back to the main part of the question that said what approach or model would best achieve your aim. If the model is not being used to refer back to, this is how it would apply in this situation, this model would provide a foundation for working with people in a certain situation. If the links were not being made, it might have just read to me like a lot of definitions, and that doesn't necessarily answer the question. So if somebody is interested in a particular model or a particular idea, they need to keep thinking about how does this link back to the question and how can I make those connections. And I guess my next point really is about referring to theories is great, but don't spend the whole essay delving into them and explaining them and describing them without making those links back to your key terms, back to what was your ideal community that you were wanting to discuss. The other comment that I wanted to make was, overall, I think people find it really hard to use critical analysis. And what critical analysis means is to show that you have read and thought at a deeper level about a particular issue. And in this particular assessment, it was also one of the marking areas that is there for you to read is that critical analysis of the community work model in relation to the tensions and the debates and the wider theoretical issues in contemporary society. So what that might mean, for example, is if you were discussing family violence, for example, and your ideal community was a community that was free of domestic and family violence. Great, that's a really clear ideal that you're wanting to achieve. When you talk about some of the broader theoretical issues and the tensions and the debates about that in relation to your community work model, you need to show that you've thought about it and you can make a statement, and you can also make a statement that highlights that there are other views. So you might talk about how does culture impact on family violence? What is gendered violence? What does patriarchy have to say or to do about family violence? What about women's access to education in the particular ideal community? There are some other broader issues about the position of women in a particular culture that you might want to bring into that conversation. That was something that a lot of students struggled with and didn't really address. What were the broader issues? What were those other theoretical issues and the debates? And that also means when you are writing in that way that you don't make a statement and say, I like what Joe Blow said and I think that'll work in this community. You need to be able to demonstrate that you've thought about the connections and how it would work, but also what are the other views that might indicate that there might be some problems with that, and how would you respond to those? So that's an area that for many people was not so strong. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight, and the referencing was really much better than previous essays, but the APA, for some people just need to check that when you're referring to a website, for example. That's another area that you need to be very careful about because you also lose marks there. So I hope that doesn't sound daunting, but I hope it's some constructive feedback. I've written comments on people's assignments, and hopefully that explains why people have been given those marks. I just want to spend a couple of minutes now talking about the next assessment for this unit. the community development project plan. And some of the comments that I've made about the first essay fit with this assessment requirements as well. And the number one thing around read the core texts, refer to the core texts that are listed for this unit, refer to those also for this community development project plan. However, I realise that you will need to read more broadly than that, and you will bring some other references in as well, and that's what's expected. With the project plan, the format is an essay, so it's writing in sentences, it's writing in prose. However, if you read the outline, and that's what I'm looking at right at the moment under assessments, if you look at the outline, it says that you can have headings. And so the way you set it up, you can have headings that will help you to set out what your plan is about. This assessment is bigger than the last in terms of the word count. It's 2,000 words, and it's asking you to imagine that you are a community development worker. So it's already giving you some really clear clues that you're a community development worker, that you're working in a non-government organisation, in a city or a town, a place that you can choose. You've been working with a group of people, and again, you can choose who that group of people are that you've been working with, because again, context in community development work defines the way that you'll be working. So you might be working with old people, you might be working with young people, you might be working with a language group or an ethnic group. You need to decide really early on who are the people that you're working with, who is your key group. And they've identified concerns about crime and violence around them in the city or in the town, and they want to work together with you to change things. So straight away you've got some very specific, it's narrowed down where you're going to start. So your goal here is to develop a project plan, a community development project that's going to work with this particular group as a starting point to address those concerns. You can decide yourself about being specific about what is the type of violence, what are the crimes that are happening, and how it would operate. Probably you're thinking already about different models of community development, different theories within community development and processes that are going to inform the work that you're thinking about doing. The headings are there to help your thinking be organised and planned, and if you have looked at Susan Kenny's reference, you will find some guidance in there around project plans, and you'll have to be very clear about why is it important to have project objectives and strategies and activities. So what are you going to do? What are you aiming to achieve? What are the steps? What are the details around that? Then that will be included in your project timeline, which is number 10. And you need to also be prepared to talk about what might be some limitations and weaknesses of the project. You need to use references in this project plan, and particularly when you get to section 5, 7 and 9, that's probably where, and 11, that's probably where you'll be using your references. And the summary, which is number 2, is only 100 words. So in the summary, you will say, this is what this project is setting out to do. This is why we're doing it. This is how we're going to go about it. This is what we hope to achieve. And you will repeat in greater detail some of those issues that you've mentioned in the brief summary. You will elaborate on those in the other sections. I just want to say with a budget, do not panic if you don't know. Again, it's a project plan for assessment. You're not going to be marked if you don't have an accurate budget. So obviously the budget is to demonstrate that you're thinking about the different costs that may be involved in this project. Do you have to employ a worker? Is there in-kind support from another organisation? Do you have to buy resources? Do you need to buy food to assist with the runnings of groups? Do you need to hire venues? Are you going to produce resources? These are some of the things that may come into what you need to think about when you're thinking about a budget. And potential funding sources, you really need to demonstrate that you have an idea about where you would go to get funding for such a project plan. So again, that involves you needing to do some research. Where would you get money for a community development project plan? For example, if it was working with young people, it may be slightly different to a project where you're working with older people. So it's an opportunity for you to be creative and pull together some of your knowledge that you already have around models, but straight away it is a community development project plan. Yeah, so I hope that that's helpful.